Okay, we'll start with the land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood City Council acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kizh people. I would like to call our regularly scheduled West Hollywood Planning Commission meeting to order. It is Thursday, May 2nd, 2024, and it's 6:31. And Pledge of Allegiance, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. David, roll call.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight we have Commissioner Gregoire, who is absent, and Commissioner Jones, who is excused, so the voting will reflect that. Commissioner Matos.
Present.
Commissioner Hoopengartner.
Present.
Commissioner Edwards.
Present.
Vice Chair Lombardi.
Present.
Chair Carvalero.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great. Item 4, approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda to make note of?
Nope, I move to approve.
The second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
A motion by Commissioner Hoopengartner, seconded by Commissioner Matos. And Commissioner Edwards. Thank you. And the motion passes, noting 5 ayes, Commissioner Jones excused, Commissioner Gregoire absent, approving the agenda as presented for May 2nd, 2024.
Thank you, David. Item 5, approval of the meeting minutes from April 18th, 2024. I understand that because of the length of our last meeting, the transcript isn't ready, so we're moving this to a date uncertain.
To a date uncertain,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, great. So no vote there. Do we have any public comments at this time?
I have no general public comments. No.
Okay, great. Director's report.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the West Hollywood Planning Commission. Nick Marisich, Community Development Director. And for my director's report this evening, I have 2 updates to share with you and the community from our long-range planning team. To celebrate Bike to Work Week, sorry, the podium is floating away from me. To celebrate Bike to Work Week, the City of West Hollywood, in collaboration with the West Hollywood Bicycle Coalition, will host a pop-up pit stop that's aimed at bicycle commuters on Thursday, May 16th from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And this is going to take place on Santa Monica Boulevard, 8743 Santa Monica Boulevard, just east of Hancock Avenue. Cyclists will be able to enjoy light refreshments and giveaways, such as free LED safety lights and a limited number of bike helmets. Information about the city's many upcoming bike and pedestrian safety projects will be provided at this event. Community members are encouraged to follow the city's mobility and streetscape project pages on the Engage WeHo portal at engage.weho.org. My second announcement is that I'm pleased to announce that the city is going to be hosting an informational open house with regard to the Willoughby, Vista Gardner, and Kings Street concept plan. This open house will be held on Tuesday, May 21st at 6 p.m. at the Plummer Park Community Rooms 1 and 2. We are inviting the community to attend to learn more about this street design concept plan, which was recently approved by the City Council on March 18th of this year. The in-person open house is being held to provide the community with detailed information regarding the concept plan and to share an overview of the project's next steps. The next stage of the project will determine the feasibility of the conceptual project elements that are identified in the concept plan and allow additional insight into any necessary refinements to be modified or incorporated for the project's final design. The city will be sending out a news release very soon to help get the word out about this event, but please share the information with anyone who may be interested. Again, the date is Tuesday, May 21st, 6 p.m. at the Plummer Park Community Rooms 1 and 2. And this concludes my report for tonight.
Thank
Happy
you.
to
Any
answer
questions for the
questions.
director? Yeah.
Oh yeah, didn't we receive some kind of acknowledgement from the state as being pro-housing or something like that?
We have, and in fact, our long-range planning team, who is well represented here at tonight's meeting, can speak to that very much, since they worked very closely with the state to achieve that designation. So I might ask our planning manager, Francisco Contreras, to provide an update on that in the planning manager's remarks. But yes, we're happy about the designation. It's very exciting for the city and opens up lots of opportunities for funding that's only eligible for cities that are, for jurisdictions that are deemed to be pro-housing.
Great.
Thank you.
So we'll get that update later.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for the director? No? Thank you. Item 8, consent calendar. We have none. Item 9, public hearing, section 1, projects subject to the Housing Accountability Act. We have none. Item 10, public hearing, section 2, projects that require a public hearing under the law. Item 10A. The Commission has been asked to consider a zone text amendment which would extend lease terms for individually owned single-family homes and condominiums to 1 year. And I understand, Francisco, you have a staff report for us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And good evening, Commissioners. We will try that again. That was a very emphatic good evening, Commissioners. So at the March 18th City Council meeting, the Council voted to approve the zone text amendment to lengthen the initial minimum dwelling lease term for individually owned condominiums and single-family residences to 1 year. This was different than the 60 days that had been recommended by the Planning Commission. Council was in favor of defaulting to longer-term tenancy and combating short-term stays that endanger the city's housing stabilization and neighborhood livability efforts. As that modification to the lease term by the council was not expressly considered by the Planning Commission, out of an abundance of caution and to ensure maximum transparency for the public, staff is bringing that item back for a public hearing at the Planning Commission for your consideration and recommendation to the council. Following this public hearing, we plan to bring the ordinance back to the City Council for its second reading, along with your recommendation and a summary of the discussion that happens here at the Planning Commission. So since the ordinance is not scheduled to take effect until January 2025, that extended effective date of the ordinance permits staff to do some additional outreach to the community members affected by the policy. So we'll do some additional outreach to the community, single-family dwelling owners and condominium owners, as we did during the initial engagement efforts, as was directed by the City Council. So with that, I want to just hand it over to Michelle Montenegro, who will provide you with an overview of the item.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners of the West Hollywood Planning Commission. My name is Michelle Montenegro, and I'm a planner with the Community Development Department. Thank you for having us. I'll be running through a presentation for the zone text amendment for initial medium lease terms for single-family owned residences and condominiums. Apologies, one moment, please.
So it appears that we have some technical difficulties.
Do we want to stop?
Yeah, maybe we can take a couple minute break just to figure out what's happening. Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back.
Okay.
Yep.
Chair, I believe we are ready to proceed.
Great. Thank you, David. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so I'll be presenting a zone text amendment on the initial minimum lease terms for single-family residences and condos. First, we'll go into the directive and ZTA timeline, followed by analysis of the proposal and then the proposed amendment itself. The directive timeline originated from the August 2020 public hearing, where there was an adoption of Ordinance 2011-12. This established initial minimum lease terms across the city for all units. For all units, at least a one-year minimum lease term was required. However, the ordinance also introduced a section that allowed for a list of exceptions. Two of these exceptions were housing types for individually owned condominiums and single-family residences. For these specific housing types, a minimum term of 31 days would substitute the one-year requirement. During the deliberations of the public hearing meeting, City Council directed staff to look at extended stay for single-family residences and condominiums. Some of the early deliberations noted a 60 or 90-day consideration. The zone text amendment was Originally, the proposal was introduced to the Long Range Planning Project Subcommittee in March 2023. Commissioners deliberated on a proposed initial minimum lease term. However, no formal recommendation was provided. Later, a zone text amendment was formally introduced to the Planning Commission as a public hearing item in the August 2023 Public Commission meeting. There, the zone text amendment was to modify Section 1936-275, initial lease terms of the city, to lengthen the current requirement of 31 days to 60 days for individually owned condominiums and single-family residences. The planning commissioners had discussion revolving around the potential need to modify longer length of term. Second, the impact and need of temporary housing as a result of labor industries in the city and outside. The need for long-term data and analysis to inform a future recommendation, as well as the need to quantify neighborhood disruption and residential quality of life. The Planning Commission ultimately voted to adopt Resolution 23-1531, carrying forward the proposal to lengthen the minimum term from 31 days to 60 days. This recommendation slide shows the Planning Commission staff report options and the City Council staff report options that would come in March of this year. The left side shows the Planning Commission options were made of 3 considerations. First was a no change to the existing initial minimum lease term of 31 days. Second was to change or introduce a proposal to change the 31 days to 60 days minimum lease term, which was the proposed recommendation by staff. And then third was to consider perhaps a longer lease term, such as 90 days. The graphic was included as the Planning Commission staff report, showing the current provision, the proposed provision, as well as the provision for apartments at 365 days or otherwise 1 year. The City Council staff report similarly showed 3 options. The first would be a no change. The second would be a minimum of 60 days, which was the Planning Commission recommendation. And the third would be a longer lease term, such as 90 days or 1 year, in alignment with apartment units. The graphic was not shown here due to formatting constraints. The zone text amendment timeline following the Planning Commission recommendation was introduced as a public hearing item in March of this year. This was taken on first reading. The City Council considered the zone text amendment to once again modify 1936-275 of the West Hollywood Municipal Code. The discussion revolved around the need to support long-term housing stock and residency within the city, to combat short-term residential rentals, and the potential correlation of temporary housing stay, hotel usage and capacity, as well as the implications of an individual staying in a hotel unit past 30 days. The City Council ultimately proposed a minimum lease term of 1 year instead of 60 days as recommended. The effective date of the ordinance would also change to be January 1st, 2025 to allow for notification instead of the typical 30 days that follows the adoption of an ordinance. The proposal was aimed at balancing conflicting interests of the strategic plan and the city's general plan. One revolves around supporting the economic development and labor industries within the city. The second would be to enhance residential livability in neighborhoods. To characterize the city's housing supply, approximately 23,000 occupied dwelling units are within the city. Of these, 28% of all units are affected by this provision or otherwise single-family residences and condominiums. 72% of these affected units are occupied by owners, and 28% are occupied by renters. In addition, staff worked with Staff and Rent Stabilization Division to collect information that was collected in the non-RSO registry. The non-RSO registry was adopted as part of an ordinance in 2023 that would collect information for rental units that were not regulated by Title 17 of the West Hollywood Municipal Code. 243 single-family residences and condos were captured as part of the non-RSO registry. Of these 243 leases, 97% reported a 1-year lease term and 3% reported a 2-year lease term. None of the reported leases were under 1 year. To consider the potential, or to consider the consideration of residential disruption and quantifying that data, we worked with the Code Compliance Division to collect code compliance data over 1 year. This showed that approximately 50% of the complaints were attributed to apartments, 2% to condominiums, 26% to single-family residential, and 15% were non-residential. Since the housing type quantities vary greatly throughout the city, these housing types were weighted based on their number within the city. So of all the apartments, 2% received a noise data complaint, 0.4% of the condominiums received a noise complaint, and 6.3% of single-family residential received a noise complaint. The proposed amendment would be a modification to West Hollywood Municipal Code Section 36275. It would amend subsection 8 by removing from the list of exceptions individually owned condominium dwelling units and single-family residences. Subsection B would be entirely eliminated to remove the 31-day individual lease term for single-family residences and condominium dwelling units. This concludes my presentation, and staff is open for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Hoopengartner? Commissioner Edwards? No? Okay. Vice
I do
Chair
have some
Lombardi?
questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Quick questions here. One moment. Was not expecting to go first, obviously. I was wondering, this mailer that was sent out, it was sent out before the city council meeting, the mailer that's referenced and included as an attachment, and that was sent out to condo owners?
Correct. The
Okay.
mailer were sent out to occupants and property owners.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I did not receive one, and I know other people did not either, and I'm a condo owner, just FYI. So just curious about that. The other question I have is just on some of this complaint data. So where the percentages are listed, this is relating to any complaint from a condo building, right? It's not relating to units themselves. I guess what I'm asking is, and I don't think that the intent was ever to get, on my end at least, when I was asking questions previously about noise complaints, et cetera, I was just trying to understand what that means in terms of rental units in condominiums versus rental units in apartments or other rental units. So I'm not surprised to see that these numbers are so low. I mean, people that own condo units are probably staying there quite long term and are quite invested in being there. But just to confirm, this data is not comparing the actual rental units of condominiums against other rental units, right? It's just looking at the buildings.
Correct. It's
Okay.
just assigned to building addresses.
Okay. I think that was it for my questions for now.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to, I doubt we have any commissioner disclosures, do we? No. David, do we have any public speakers? And just, this is,
We do, Chair. I believe we are all clear on the Zoom platform. We do have one public speaker here in chambers. Marley, you'll have 3 minutes. You can approach the podium and state your name and city of residence, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marley Gazzetta. My partner and I are proud homeowners here in West Hollywood. I want to thank you all very much for the work that you put in to making this city what it is. We think it's one of the best places to live in Southern California. I hope I'll maybe get a remix to the meeting when it drops. Thank you guys for setting this all up, especially in the middle of the week. So in January of 2023, I had the terrible misfortune of becoming the HOA president of our 20-unit condo complex on Harper between Sunset and Fountain. Our president, we have 3 board members. 2 were inactive. They do not live on site. We allow rentals. 1 member was older gentleman, and he went into the hospital for emergency surgery and remained there for 3 months. And this was, as you may all remember, during the rains, as I refer to it. So it was an emergency situation. I became HOA president at that time. And if anybody else, I don't know if anybody else in here is an HOA president, but I wish them much good fortune in their rain repairs, because it's been a very busy year and a half-ish, right? In the last year, I think we've gone through maybe $80,000 in rain repairs and catching up in maintenance after the pandemic. We've handled balance sheet errors from our management, from our property management company. We've handled a growing, and when I say me, I mean me, respectfully, it's been me. When I say, we've also been handling a growing trespassing incursion from our unhoused neighbors on Sunset, as more of those buildings have fallen into lack of use and remain empty. And we've also seen an increase in unsafe driving down our street. And actually that would be, so there are a lot of issues that we're dealing with right now, but potentially no issue has created a more single issue has created a bigger disruption for our peace and quiet than the Airbnb tenants that we have staying there now. I have received extensive reports from our neighbors about trespassing in stairwells, vomiting on property, including my own, especially from one gentleman who was kicked out of his Uber for vomiting in the Uber, and then kicked out of the Uber, and then tried to break into our apartment and ended up vomiting on our patio. They've caused plumbing issues. I've had to ask them to stop sunbathing in front of our neighbors' front doors. They fought with tenants. They've turned our guest parking lot into a long-term parking lot for themselves and their many guests, which has also caused additional strain on the parking along Harper. There are a lot of apartment buildings there. Our neighbors do not all have their own parking. In the apartment building next door, they have to beg for a parking pass for their lot, and they rely on street parking, right? And we have had a lot of overflow from these guests because of how they have been using or misusing our parking resources. And that's only what I know, right? That's only what I have seen or has been reported to me. As an HOA, I cannot speak at all to the single dwelling issue, but as an HOA, we see this as a misuse of common property for personal gain. As you know, HOAs are property held in common. I'm sorry, guys, I thought I had 3 minutes. Was that 3 minutes? Ooh, girl, she's going long. Thank you very much. I apologize, guys. I'm going to try not to be so cute about things. We have had legal issues with this tenant in the past. We would actually bring a legal complaint, but we've had legal issues with them in the past. And we found that if a tenant has low fee legal representation, it is cost prohibitive for us to continue those legal entanglements. We can't maintain the building. So this kind of support is critical to us. Your support is critical to us. Some of those reports are mine. Many things did not go reported. And I think, the only other notes that I would have here is that we have zero concerns about this policy. We're happy to report discriminating against any marginalized demographic. So far as our building is concerned, these short-term guests are almost entirely white men in heterosexual relationships. And I know that because they bring their wives and their girlfriends and their adult children who park their cars and over-occupy our spaces. And when one was reprimanded, he responded with something that was just this side of a homophobic slur. So I'm going to guess that they are not members of our LGBTQ community. We would also hope that this policy would encourage the revitalization of the abandoned Standard Hotel, which is around the corner from our building and has fallen into a state of under maintenance around the corner. Maybe that could be revitalized as a hotel. And we would ask, if possible, if there's this is a rhetorical question, if there'd be a way to address the false alibi that we have heard as well when we've addressed the owner that the people staying there are friends, that they are allowing friends there for short-term tenancy.
Do you mind wrapping up?
What's that?
Do you mind wrapping up?
Yeah, wrapping up right now.
Thank you.
And my wrap up, actually, and I was just say thank you very much for taking this on because we could really use the backup. Like really, truly, you guys, I sincerely appreciate the time and the effort. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, that's our last public speaker.
Great, thank you. So I'll close the public speaker portion of this public hearing. Commissioner deliberations. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to start with? Commissioner Matos?
Oh, no comments.
No comments?
I was gonna move approval if there's no other comments.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
No, I'd just like to thank the public for speaking. I once was cursed as a HOA president, so I feel your pain. I think that this is a directive from council. I think it was a unanimous directive from council, which is almost unheard of. And I personally feel that this is in the best interest of the city because the Airbnb issue is an ongoing issue throughout. I would encourage the public to contact code enforcement whenever and wherever possible. If for no other reason than when staff comes to us with data, they have accurate data. And you may or may not get resolution, but it will help with ammunition when it comes to, understanding what's actually going on in the community. So, personally, I'm in favor of staff's recommendation and would move if there's no objection.
Commissioner Edwards, any comments? No? Vice
I
Chair Lombardi?
I do have some comments, and actually one really quick question that relates to my comments too, if staff could answer. I was just wondering in the staff report, and hearing our public commenter, there was a note that there were no short-term rentals registered through the city's registry portal, correct?
No, so that registry portal is only for longer term leases, so not short-term rentals under business license chapter 533.
So if you were renting your unit month to month, you would not be required to register it on the portal?
Short-term rentals were defined as less than 30 days. So if previous to this you were renting for 31 days or longer or month to month, you would be required to register on the non-Otter Soap registry. But less than 30 days, it would not be required.
Okay, so that's why we're not seeing any of this data in the report in terms of number of rentals that would be short-term, correct?
Yes, only longer than a month.
Okay. That's it. Thank you for that. Just to give some comments, I also was cursed as an HOA president once, and yes, it is more work than you expect at times. And to that point, I can say personally that I think one thing that changed was when the state regulations were revised and Assembly Bill 3182 came into place. It basically removed the option for HOAs to set their own minimum lease terms and opened it up to monthly rentals. So that's something that I think a lot of people in the community have observed has become a thing. I know it happened where I lived. Suddenly a larger percentage were being rented month to month. Some of it is, probably through people that are working at Cedars and other sort of industries that have more of a short-term employment setup. And then other instances, it's been an especially challenging thing with, people taking their units that otherwise would be a community member and just trying to profit as much as they can off of it, and then not necessarily caring to invest in the property or the community either, since they're not there anymore. So it's definitely been challenging, and actually, likewise, I had to deal with a homophobic neighbor that was, there and in my face, and short-term renter, and it didn't feel great. So we didn't have a robust conversation last time this came to us about longer terms. I know that 90 or longer was something that was included in the staff report as something to consider, but we were really just looking at it in terms of the zone text, and I think we were looking at the data we were presented, and so it's great to hear what City Council's direction is and to look at this now in a new light. And it all makes sense to me, especially given that we're in a housing crisis. So, I'm definitely in support of this zone text amendment change as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lombardi. Any other comments?
I'm just going to voice my support as well. I think
Okay.
it'll protect the housing stock and help keep housing costs low.
Thank you. I feel the same. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second. Okay,
Seconded.
great.
Moved by Commissioner Hoopengarner, seconded by Commissioner Matos. And the motion passes, noting 5 ayes, Commissioner Gregoire absent, and Commissioner Jones excused from this vote. There is no appeal process. This will be returning back to the City Council.
Thank you, David. Moving on, item 11, new business, we have none. Item 12, unfinished business, we have none. Item 13, we do not have anything on the excluded consent calendar. Item 14, items from staff or planning manager's update.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, I wanted to share the great news that the state has officially designated West Hollywood as a pro-housing jurisdiction. So we are only one of 47 cities in the entire state to be designated pro-housing. And just as a matter of pride, we are one of the highest scoring cities in the state. So I think we're tied for second place. We almost got Santa Monica, but we were very, very close. So we're really, really proud of that achievement. And obviously, it's a team effort. We're really proud of the work that both the department has done, our decision makers, our policy makers, the Planning Commission, and the City Council, because that was a really, really large feat. What happens now and why it matters is because that actually permits the city to apply for grants that are otherwise not allowed for other jurisdictions. So it does open a lot of grant opportunities for other sort of pro-housing developments. So we've already submitted a grant to secure some funds for the Holloway Motel project, which should really help, spur that along. So that is already great news. So we will, keep you updated as we hear more about that in the coming years.
Thank you.
And also wanted to provide you sort of an update for the upcoming Planning Commission meetings, just so that you can have that in mind. So at the May 16th meeting, we do have 3 public hearings. One of them is for a beer and wine sale at the existing mobile gas station at 8380 Santa Monica Boulevard. There is another CUP for off-site sale of alcohol at the WeHo Cigar and Smoke Shop at 8733 Santa Monica Boulevard. And then I think probably the big item that night will be the billboard at 8590 Sunset Boulevard. That's basically at Equinox. And that's the replacement of rooftop signs for the introduction of a standard 2-sided billboard. So that's for May 16th. June 6th, we have 4 items at the moment. There is another CUP for Cash Tan Deli at 7707 Santa Monica Boulevard for off-site consumption of alcohol. We are bringing a zone text amendment to consider the expansion of hotel rooftop amenities. There is also an update about Barry's Boot Camp at 8383 Santa Monica Boulevard, which is sort of at the Kings Road parking structure. And then lastly, there's also a general plan consistency item for the capital improvement plan for the city that is part of the budget process. So that's sort of a routine matter that always comes to the Planning Commission every year. For Design Review Subcommittee, the meeting was canceled for May 9th, so there's no meeting on the 9th. And at this time, there is nothing scheduled for the May 23rd or the June 13th Design Review Subcommittee. And then lastly, we do have an item scheduled for the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee on June 13th. And that is the review for a billboard at 8801 Sunset Boulevard. That's the Supreme store or the old Tower Records site. So that's just a little bit of a preview. Thank you, Chair, and that's all from me.
No public comment.
We don't have any public comments? Okay, great. Items, yeah, that's right, we're the only ones in here. Items from the commissioners. Does anybody have anything to share? No? Okay. Well, then I'll adjourn this meeting to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be on May 16th, 2024 at 6:30 here in this location. Thank you.